like to first of all thank you for the invitation to allow me to share some views with you as to our future development of Guyana. And before doing so, I would like to first of all acknowledge the role, the tremendous role that the private sector has played and is playing in Guyana's development and the achievements economically that we have made despite a unfavorable, at times very unfavorable international economic situation and an opposition that seemed intent on holding our country back. So I want to thank you very much, and I want to recognize the tremendous role that you have played. To thank you and to salute you for the optimism and confidence that you have shown, and the hundreds of entrepreneurs who took risks, raised financing, investment in projects, created jobs, and today are earning a deserved return on their investment. I would also like to recognize and thank you for the collaboration with the private sector and the government in pursuit of many common goals in the interest of our country. We have, over the years, developed many policy documents. I would think there were probably over 3,000 pages of documents that we have produced. And we have done that, consecutive PPP civic government have done that in partnership with the private sector at every stage. Just want to remind you that in 1997, the National Development Strategy was one such document that involved a wide cross-section of the private sector. In 1999, you had the Presidential Business Summit. And then we had the inaugural National Competitiveness Summit in 2006. In 2011, you had the second National Competitiveness Summit, and in 2013, the National Economic Forum, all of which the private sector played a very important role in helping to craft, together with us, policymakers, government officials, helping to craft these policies that we have pursued, and may I say, that has helped us to successfully navigate the difficulties in the economic situation internationally that we had faced. But now, to go to what we plan to do in the future. Since the 1990s, we have not given any commercial bank license. And that was because of the small economy. The size of our economy was very small at that time, and it was a conscious decision on our part not to balkanize the small market that we had. And that is why we didn't give any more banking license since the 1990s. But my intention is to issue more commercial banking license in the future once I'm elected again. I think that is important because I feel that even though the banking sector has done extremely well and they work very closely with us on many projects, I still detect some amount of conservatism in them. And I think that this, giving more license to reputable, we will search for reputable banks to try to bring them into Guyana. And my hope that this will help greatly help the private sector greatly, because by stimulating more competition in this area I expect that the interest rate spread will come down considerably to the benefit of the private sector in that regard. We will also try to catalyze development-type financing without, at the moment at least, setting up these special development banks. But we will be using more fiscal measures that we believe can serve the same purpose until we are able more to establish the specialized type of institutions. And we have had some experience in this regard. The arrangements that we have made with the banks in order to bring down loans to housing for housing purposes, we were able to make it affordable to borrowers in the construction of houses, and we made it beneficial to the banks to lend money in that area. And we also have the experience with our Women's of Worth program, where we were also giving incentives to the banks to lend women who, particularly single women, money, who were with good ideas in business and who were able, many of them were able to grow. So we want to extend that experience. We would like to extend that experience into other sectors. And we hope that we can do that with other sectors to stimulate small and medium-sized enterprises to grow. And all of us know that not only in theory, but in practice, the important role that is played by micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. And that will help to stimulate more business and help to sustain the growth that we have been having. And this will be done without the costly development of the bureaucracy and the cost that entails to set up these specialized institutions. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm saying more of it when we can so afford it, when our economy becomes stronger. The other area that is very important in there is, and we just heard the president of the GMA speaking about it, the need to have cheap energy in our society. That is extremely important. And I want to point out to you that when we try to develop renewable energy, hydropower, that was a dream that we've had a long time. And when we developed our first NDS strategy document, partnering with you, with the inputs that you had in it, and I would like to remind those of you who, I see some faces here who I think participated in that process. And I would like to read to you what was said in that document, which captured the discussion and the partnership between the private sector and the government. It reads as follows, and I quote, "It is evident that hydropower represents a major economic endowment and opportunity for Guyana, both as a primary source of power for domestic consumption and as a hub around which the development of the country's economic potential could revolve. It would seem that from the available data, that priority should be given to the development of a miner, the utilization of which would enable the establishment of industries such as the smelting of aluminum, and yet leave sufficient excess capacity to serve the remainder of Guyana's domestic and industrial needs for some time to come. On the potential hydropower sites that have been listed earlier in this chapter, Amila in the Potaro River Basin has proved to be the most feasible. Its feasibility depends, of course, upon the significant utilization of the energy which it generates. In putting forward proposals for its financing, therefore, the potential market for energy which will be supplied from Amila will be carefully described. A sales campaign will be mounted specifically to promote investment in this project. An investment package which will involve, in addition to private sector financiers, bilateral donors, and international financial institutions, will be formulated. The idea will be to persuade a consortium of financiers to invest in the project. The proposals to the consortium will include provisions for build, operate, and transfer, or build, own, operate arrangements, unquote. So you see, this was a very, very well thought out project that was seen by all as being important to, well, I can't say by all, but by most people to see the importance of it. Now, with cheap energy in our country, Guyana will save $3 billion from the Treasury over 20 years. And then that entity was supposed to come to us for free. We will have had no debts, absolutely no debts, the arrangement that we were going into. And I dare say, despite what I've heard subsequently from the opposition, that this was explained explicitly to them when I invited them to my office and had the technical people make a thorough presentation to them. So to say that they opposed it because of debt is a total misrepresentation, to be kind. We would have been buying power at half from the company, at half of what we are generating power at this point in time. And that is why I want to assure you, and I want to emphasize, that when elected again in May 11, I will pursue the Amila Falls hydroelectric project, and hopefully I will work very hard to start building it before the end of this year. The other areas of other supporting infrastructure, we have spoken about the need for a new airport. I know when we speak about building a new airport, most people, and probably because some of the leading lights in the tourism sector, they talk more about tourism. And that is true. That is true. It will stimulate and help tourism greatly, but it's more than that. It can help our country to become a hub, an aerial hub, where we can have more aircrafts come in and land in here, more people come in here. And very important, cheaper freight costs. Right now, freight costs, air freight costs is too high. We need to have cheaper freight so that we can export more, not only the big company, but the fresh vegetables people, the small farmers in our society, places like Laluni and these places can flourish because we could bring down the freight charges considerably in order, and a new airport is extremely important to help in more aerial export of our goods and services. Moreover, we are putting down the infrastructure too now, the 4-lane roads, which are important to saving time in traffic and to be moving our goods more faster along our highways, saving time and increasing capacity. Thank you. Also, hotels like these are extremely important too for business development in our country. This is the first world-class hotel that we have built in Guyana, and I see it as having a very important role to play to stimulate business, and that can help the private sector to grow and to even flourish. Let me give you just one of my experiences, my own experiences. We were supposed to have a conference here, an investment conference here from Middle East investors to come here to meet and to have a big conference to talk about possibilities of them investing in our economy. When the Kuwaitis came here, they flew out back the same day, because you know they come with their own jet. They flew out back the same day because they didn't feel that the accommodation that we had was sufficient for them to be here. Was it not sufficient? And probably the standards were not, it was not up to standard for what they're accustomed to. And they invited us to go to the Middle East in Kuwait for such a conference that we will still have to, an invitation that we will still have to pick up on. And only yesterday I was talking with another businessman who told me of his experience with some other people who he had here, and they came down to some of our hotels, and they had to fly out to Trinidad to come back the next day to carry on their business activities. So I think that projects like this, which we hope you heard in my opening remarks a few days ago in this hotel, I hope that will help to lift standards, and in new hotels that will be built, that they will be built to the standards. So, but with this alone, we can hold much more business conferences, much more trade conferences that can stimulate economic development, stimulate businesses, and help in private sector and the country's growth as well. We want also to tie that up with a deep water harbor. A deep water harbor is extremely necessary at this time. I know that some people feel that, or there might be some trepidation about building a deep water harbor in the Berbice area and what impact it will have on the Demerara Harbor. In my view, Demerara Harbor will always be important. Will always be important. Demerara Harbor cannot and would not be de-emphasized in any way. But clearly we need a new deep water harbor to deal with the new type of maritime trade that is taking place. I spoke publicly already about the Panama Canal being expanded, and I heard talk about the possibility of a new canal being dug in Nicaragua, all of which will tell us that we have to start thinking ahead. And if you look at the Caribbean, you will see that the Caribbean are preparing for this new kind of international trade that is coming on us. Jamaica is now building a new deep water harbor facilities. Cuba has already built a new deep water facility at Mariel. But we have a distinct advantage in the sense that we're both a Caribbean and a South American country. And we can become, not only can we become an aerial hub, but we can become a maritime hub. And a lot of South America, particularly Brazil, can do a lot of their international trade through us. And when you think about the spin-off benefits that can occur with this development, you will see how enormously important it would be for both private sector, for the government, and for the country as a whole. Freight, you have reduced freight. We can export in larger volumes, import in larger volumes. We can do trucking business. The trucking business will be tremendously improved and developed, more logistic. And we want to tie the Deepwater Harbor with a free trade zone that will also help to create employment, create much, much more employment for our people in manufacturing and in other areas that can help. Of course, it will also entail us paving the road to Lethem, to Brazil, to take advantage, maximum advantage of the Deepwater Harbor. And therefore, we can open up Lethem. Lethem, at least initially, Lethem can be used even if at the beginning, where you can continue to manufacture and do things here. You can warehouse at Lethem in order to sell to the south. But we also see in the future about opening free zones there for manufacturing and different kind of activity. To do all of this too, we have, and I think that our worst critics will agree with us that we have been very responsible with the macro stability of our country. And that is why we would like to maintain our policy, our macroeconomic policy. We want to maintain it to be stable and predictable in our society. I've heard, for instance, the opposition promising a lot of things, a lot of free things. They're promising to all kinds of freeness, and they're also promising to cut taxes, cut revenues. Not saying where we can pay, where we can find the money to pay for these things. Our manifesto will be coming out in a few days' time, and in every one of our proposals, we have how we can see these things financed and made better. What would that policy of such do? It will take us back to an experience that we already had in this country. It will create a bigger deficit, a much bigger deficit. It will create higher inflation, and it will create exchange rate instability in the society. And how do you deal with that? What tools the government has in its hands to deal with that type of situation? The tool that we have is to raise interest rates. But therefore, we have to be responsible. We have to be responsible ensuring that our environment, our macroeconomic environment, is stable. That, I believe, has contributed tremendously to your great investment, both local and foreign private sector. They're your investment in our economy that has helped us to grow. I think that is indeed very important to our own development. But of course, taxes, I said I'd talk about cutting taxes just now. But I promise you that we will keep them under review regularly. And you know that we've cut corporations tax, we've brought down personal income taxes. We have constantly, as our economy improves, we are constantly reviewing the tax system and bringing it down in a responsible way. And you know, as I speak, they're drilling for oil outside on our shore. And if we find oil, you too might be shocked at what we can do with taxes. We can practically eliminate taxes for all I am concerned. So we will constantly keep it on the review. But you know, our fiscal situation has been improving every year, and we can keep that on a constant review. I want also to talk about the human capital investment that we're making. And I promised you, I know that you know that that is probably one of my pet subjects, but I wouldn't be going on and it. Just to say that we will continue to pursue to ensure that minimum education in this country would be secondary education in the near future. And moreover, we are going to review and realign our education system to deal with the skills that we need for the development of our society. That is what one of the bills actually we have in the Parliament, when I prorogued the Parliament, that I was asking the opposition to speak about. That is one of the bills that is lying there that I thought that it's extremely important for us to have those things straightened out and to provide the more skilled and educated workforce that you, the private sector, will benefit enormously from. You will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of our investment in that regard. And you know, we also have a program where we're training thousands of people, giving them a second chance. Those who dropped out of school. We have, through the Ministry of Labor, the Board of Industrial Training. We're training thousands of people in heavy-duty operators, mechanics, electricians, beauticians, home economics, all of these type of things. And we're even building for the service sector, for the hotel industry, the service sector generally. We're going to build a new institute to train so that our people can provide world-class services to the world-class institutions that we are developing here as well. So we are going to ensure that we have the human capital that can help to take our country to even higher and higher levels. I know that one of the concerns in the business sector, from my own experience when I met business people over the last 3 years that I've been president, one of the issues that they have raised with me constantly is the issue of security. And security is extremely important for business. People want to feel safe, to do business here safely, and people want to do business, people want to live also in a safe environment. I had an opportunity to listen to a presentation from the Vanderbilt, the study from the Vanderbilt University, where they studied Latin America, South America, and the Caribbean on the security sector. And I was pleasantly surprised because this is an activity that the government had nothing to do with. It was financed by the US government, I believe, or some institutions in the United States. And I was surprised, and my team that listened to that presentation, we were surprised to hear that Guyana has the second lowest experience of crimes in Latin America and the Caribbean. That shows you also the power of some kinds of press, newspaper, and the perception that it can create in our society. Nevertheless, I recognize that we have to deal with this fear. And one of the things that came out of the same Vanderbilt study was the question of the police and their response time to crime. Well, I've already started to work on that, already telling the police that they have to cut their response time considerably in getting to crime scene. And you know, only a few weeks ago, I elaborated a 15-point plan, a security plan, when I addressed the officers' conference of the Guyana Police Force. So, my dear friends, I think those are some of the key areas that will have a tremendous impact on the whole environment. The whole environment. Probably there's one other thing that I should touch on, something that I have also heard from many private sector people, the bureaucracy in government and the way of doing business. And that is something we will examine. In our next term, we will examine that very, very closely to ensure that bureaucracy and red tape is cut out and bureaucracy is minimized so that business transaction can improve with greater speed and less bureaucratic obstacles in preventing investment in business. And let me also just touch one other important area, an area that I have to be constantly advised on too because of the newness in the area, the ICT sector. I think the ICT sector has a tremendous role to play. We will liberalize the ICT sector. That's in another bill. That's another bill that is lying in Parliament. That's another bill I appeal to the opposition to talk about when I prorogued the Parliament at that time, that we should have this bill to liberalize the area. And I want to say, though, that government has no intention of going into competition with companies that are providing this service. But just to make it clear, we have to create social bandwidth for the poor and for some kinds of institution to help them not to be left behind. That we don't want, in the prosperity and development of our country, we don't want our country to be left behind. So I want to be very clear. I don't want to mislead anyone that we do have an interest and we will intervene on the part of the most vulnerable for social bandwidth to make it available to those people. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for inviting me here and for your attention.
The first question, Mr. President, if your party is successful in this election,
When did it?
will your government continue the same policy with respect to long exports?
Okay. And what's the other one?
The second question, Mr. President, is regarding fiscal concessions. Here again, the Asians get everything. We in the GMA have always advocated a level playing field. The playing field is not level at the moment. These companies can bring in hundreds of trucks, all sorts of things. We don't get those concessions. In fact, let me just say, it wasn't for the Minister of Finance, my companies will run into a dead end. We get nowhere with the revenue, nowhere. And the Minister had to intervene a few times. So my second question, Mr. President, is would the playing field be level? Can we get these same sorts of fiscal incentives that the Asians who are here and just coming for our loss? Thank you.
The thing is, the whole idea of getting cheaper energy was in order to add value to our products. Specifically as far as logging is concerned, you know that we have committed ourselves to preserving our forests. And we have about 99% of our forests we want to preserve because we're going to earn money from it. And even the other part that we are not preserving, there's still not enough logs being cut according to what will still make it sustainable. I would say that because of the fact that we do not have all the processing facilities, because also some of the markets, I believe the Chinese markets, for instance, probably the Indian market, if I'm not mistaken, they also have a ban on importation of some finished wooden products. And therefore, export of logs to those markets at a time when we don't have some of the facilities becomes important for the livelihood of hundreds, if not thousands, of small loggers in many regions of our country, Region 6, Region 10, Region 3, where I've come from. I still think the people in Kari are still struggling with some timber. So, banning the export of logs at this time, I believe will not be the best thing. It can we can put a lot of hardship and create a lot of suffering for a lot of people involved in this sector. You can probably have a follow-up later. On the fiscal concession that you're claiming that the Asian companies have, I don't agree with you. I don't think that the Asian companies have any more concession than any other foreign company will have in our society. I would like you to point out to me, because I'm always very clear about this. I've been speaking to our finance people all the time to ensure that there is a level playing field according to the level of investments that we have within our society. And therefore, such a broad statement that they enjoy more concessions than other people making the same kind of investment, I do not accept.
Mr. President, in your bid for re-elections, and I've been a lead in the private sector for close to 18 years. And for 18 years, at the level of the Tourism Association, Chamber of Commerce, the Aircraft Owners Association, we have never had corruption as an item on the agenda. Because the private sector, throughout all those years, we have never denied that there may be isolated incidents and events of corruption. But we have never in 18 years sat around a table and had corruption as a major item on the agenda of the private sector. 2011 came, and the perception and the propaganda started crazy, to the extent that Guyana was labeled from a perception index as one of the most corrupted countries in this region. And I remember I personally felt very offended by it, and I said so publicly, I do not live anywhere close to a country that is as corrupted as the allegation and the perception index seems to indicate. But my question to you is, for all this time that your government was in power, the institutions to fight corruption remained a concern to the private sector. The issue of the Integrity Commission, the issue of the Procurement Commission, the issue of maybe modern-day anti-corruption and bribery legislation. So my question to you is, as you embark on the future and your bid for re-election, are you and your government seriously contemplating the enactment and activation, operationalizing of these what we consider very crucial institutions to fight corruption and the perception of corruption? Thank you very much.
Let me begin by saying that I will sit here in front of you and tell you that there is no corruption in our country. But But what I want to tell you is what we have done to fight corruption in Guyana. When we came to office, there was absolutely no bidding system. No bidding system. People could go and buy a house for $4 million without any bids on it. You had no procurement policy. Government used to buy from whoever they want to buy from. We instituted these things, put these things in place. We put them in place. The bidding system came in place because of this government, to fight corruption, precisely to fight corruption. We also put in place all for everything, for contracts and for purchasing. We put the bidding system in place. When we got into the office, at least 10 years before we got into the office, government books were not even audited. Were not even audited. Blackmail, you don't like me saying these, huh? They were not even audited. Since we got in government, every single year, the Auditor General audits government's books. Government senior officials are summoned and they go to the Public Accounts Committee that is chaired by the opposition party. And they answer questions there. That report goes to the Parliament. And then that report goes to the Ministry of Finance. And the Ministry of Finance must come and put answers, what is called a Treasury Memorandum, to say what they're going to do about the shortcomings that the Auditor General finds. So we've put all of these things, all of these measures in place. Let me also point out to you that we give up as a cabinet. No other country in the Caribbean, and probably few in the Commonwealth, the cabinet has given up the right to award contracts. This cabinet, this PPP civic government cabinet, does not award contracts. We give a no objection. We give a no objection, that is, or we withhold our no objection. So, those are the measures that we put in place in fighting corruption. But of course, as I said, a lot of these things were premised on the grounds that there was no collaboration with consultants and contractors and so forth. And some of them, I believe, I'm just speaking at my own belief, that some of these things do happen. So, those are the measures that we put in place. As far as setting up the bodies that you've talked about, yes, it is this government that proposed setting up those bodies in the first place. But it is the Parliament that was supposed to nominate these people and bring them to the government to be appointed. The Parliament, where the opposition has a one-seat majority, have not brought to us any list of persons to be appointed to the procurement commission that we're talking about. They have not brought to us any such names to be named. So, I promise you this, when we win back our majority on May 11th, that is one of the things we're going to do. We're going to put it back in place and we're going to appoint the procurement commission. That is what we do.
Is there any thought about reducing this risk for access and financing in Guyana by creating another mechanism by which small industries, cottage industries, the poorest of the poor in Guyana, who really have the problem of access to finance for their small industries, who make up a large part of the poorest of the poor in Guyana, who really suffers from access to finance, and who can access such finance. Is there any plans to create and reduce such risk? That's the first question. The second question is, and it follows from the first question, and that is, there are industries in Guyana that I know of, and one is IPED, that have far-reaching arms in Guyana that reaches the poorest of the poor. Is there any plans, or would it not be more wise to develop partnership with such institutions as IPED to create a reduction in such risks for the poorest of the poor, and people who really means more to the development of Guyana in terms of reducing crime, creating people more into employment, and opening new businesses, and so on? Would it not make more sense to develop a partnership, such partnership with IPED, to extend its reach and to create more of such access that I talked about, instead of creating a new corporation in Guyana that will just harass poor industry?
Yeah, could we? I think we got. I think the president got the thing. Yes.
Do these things without creating more institutions, because one, we can't afford it now. We can't, from our treasury to set up some of these things. It's not possible to do it now. But in place of those things, I've said that we will use our experience that we have in setting up like the WOW program, like the housing, how we work with the banks. The same system that we've used to work with the banks to ensure that interest rate comes down for people who are building houses of $8 million and so on, smaller people, so we said, what I said, that I'm going to use that experience from our housing experience, from our WOW program, Women of Works program, to broaden it, to spread it into other sectors, into the small and medium-scale enterprises people, to help them have cheaper financing to develop their products, people in the interior, etc. We also have, I think Mr. Cummins is here, I attended an activity that they had about 2 months ago or so, where they were also lending to small, micro and small businesses for them to develop, giving them loans at low interest rates. As far as IPED is concerned, I think they're doing a good job. I want to compliment them on the work that they're doing. I still think that their interest rate is far, far too high, though. Very much high. And I want to let you know, though, that the government has been responsible in lending and giving IPED money. In the early days, government has done a lot to help IPED to grow, and that is why I think, for that reason, because of government's input into IPED, I believe that the interest rate is too high. But as you said, they have considerable reach and institutions that we are ready to work with. But the main thing is to make the finances, the micro and small businesses affordable. That is the #1 priority, that they can have an opportunity to grow and develop.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the energy aspect of your speech. I'm representing the principal of our company is Mr. Alfred Bullock. Now, you mentioned that if the Amali Falls project come online, the cost for electricity would be dropped by about half, right? I would like to know, with the escalating cost for the Amali project, will that cost that we will have to pay for electricity be guaranteed when it comes on? Or will there be other hidden agenda, things that would, or other reasons that would be brought out to say that the startup cost would have to be higher and then it will be brought up later on and so on? That's my first question. Second question is, there is an incentive with the Trinidadians. They currently have an excess capacity of power, and they would like to sell some of their power to Guyana by means of a submarine cable. I would like to know if there's any initiative or so by your government to undertake that project with the Trinidadians. It's a joint project, and it would mean that if the submarine cable is laid, we can be buying power from them, guaranteed, at a cost between 12 to 15 US cents, which is roughly half to a little more than half of what we're paying for electricity right now. That's the discount I'm talking about. And if we have that cable and we have the Amani project comes online, we can then sell power to the Trinidadians and the Surinamese who...
All right, could I just ask you to pose the question and not make a case, please?
Sorry, yes.
I think we got the question, not pose a case.
Yeah, those are the questions, Mr. President.
I have no such proposal on my desk. You see me whispering to my finance minister. I asked him if he had any such proposal. He doesn't have any such proposal on our desk. But you also, I think you misunderstood what I said. I didn't say that the price of electricity will come down by half. What I said, with that project, government would have been buying electricity from the company that is generating electricity from hydropower at half the cost of what we are producing it now for. The generating cost now that we have. That is what I was saying. I anticipate that once from advice from technical people, I anticipate that the price of electricity will come down in the first instances to consumer by around 20%. And then as we go on operating, the cost can come down more. And in 20 years, it comes to us free. We take it over in the arrangement that we have. So that is the arrangement that we have with this activity, and that is what I said. It was going to, and that was the argument I was using all along. That one, we would not have been creating any debt for our country. It was a project that we would not have been creating a single cent of debt for Guyana. And two, it was a project that had a life expectancy of 75 years. The people will operate it for 20 years. It will come to us, and we will own it. The country will own it after that. So those are the points that I made. I didn't say that it will be cut by 50%.
So I'd like to ask you two questions. First of all, on tourism. Your opponents in this election have been definitely silent on tourism. Of all of the ads I've seen so far, there hasn't been a single mention of any interest in the development of tourism by your opponents, except perhaps their virulent effort to stop this hotel being built, which in itself is an asset to tourism. So I would ask you to spend a few moments on laying out your government's position on the development of our tourism industry, and most especially the incentives that your government are likely to put in place that would make our tourism product competitive with our Caribbean and Central and South American competitors, number one. And two, if you could spend just a few moments on the government's position with the development of our aviation industry, and especially with regard to moving our country from a Category 2 status to Category 1 status. Thank you.
It would be hard for me right now to describe to you all the incentives that we would want to use to push the tourism more and more. Just mentioned, when I was speaking, I mentioned just now that we're creating a new institute to train people in the hospitality business. That is one investment that the government is making to create the human capital for the industry itself. On the other kinds of, I know that we've given concessions, tax concessions and so forth to startup and so on and so forth in the sector. We're willing to look more at those because we think that tourism has a huge, huge role to play in the development of our society. That it is one of the underdeveloped areas that can have a major impact on our economic development. So yes, we're going to look at all that the country can afford as far as concessions are concerned to promote and to push the development of tourism, because we see the importance of this sector to the growth and development of our country. The other part of the question, and then Kachi, you were able to do category 1.
Moving, what actions you're taking to move Guyana from a category 2 to a category 1? That was it, Kit? From 2 to 1?
Yes, as you know, Mr. President, we are currently a category 2 status country.
Far the last
moving us
conversation
from category 2 to category 1.
About that. The last conversation I had with Minister Rooks and Ben with that, we were actually looking to move to bringing some people from Trinidad to help us to look at the things that we need to do, specialists, people that we need to do, the steps that we need to take to actually take the airport into a category 1 status. But it's something that is very active on our agenda, and I know that the last conversation I had when I was raising this with Minister Ben, he was looking to see bringing in someone from Trinidad to help us, to take us, a consultant from Trinidad to help to take us there. Because I think the one person that we had here, that this is what the explanation I was given, that could have done the job, migrated and taken another more lucrative job abroad. So we'd have to probably pay for a consultancy to get it done as early as possible.
My question relates to policy. Guyana has, and with your government, developed the low carbon development strategy, the national competitiveness strategy, the poverty reduction strategy. And I know that lately you have ratified a science and technology policy. However, one of the things that stymies national acceptance of things like hydro is the country doesn't have a national policy on energy, which relates to both alternative energies as well as how we balance our current sources, including some of the questions that the young man asked. By the way, one of the ways that policies can truly help is that they help not to have the specter of hidden agendas. So my question to you, sir, is can we expect a PPPC government in the next 5 years to approach national development more from a policies perspective as opposed to having initiatives that then raises the ire across the country?
We developed together with the private sector, in consultation with the private sector, the NDS, competitiveness strategy and so forth. In those documents, you will find that there's a whole chapter dealing with energy. Some of the people who, as I said, worked in those things are right in this room, who collaborated with government to work in those things. So we all have a policy, but I'm not adverse to looking at them again, developing them, new ideas. Times change very fast, technology change. Sure, we're ready to look. You would have heard me on the campaign saying, and I don't put my words lightly, I say that I'm looking forward to making Guyana, or making energy a commodity that can also, not only should we be able to work toward satisfying our needs, but to develop our potential so that we can even export energy to neighboring countries. So, yes, we do have some policies on this already, when you look at the NDS and the competitiveness strategy. But as I said, we're open to new ideas, new views, to see if they need to be modified, improved, or if to be cast aside and come up with something totally new. I'm open to that.
You know, this country grows a lot of food, and we continue to do so. Do you know how difficult it is for them to get it into Carrigo? You tried selling any pineapple or greens into the Carrigo countries, and I can guarantee you it will remain in the wars until it rots. I have the people from Sandals here. officials in Antigua and St. Lucia. And they were happy when I took them to Canal #1 and I showed them what we were producing. And the farmer said to me, he said, Kim, I'm very good. If you want to lose your money, you buy this thing and sell it into Caribbean. And that was the end of it. And government, I've said this in Parliament, government has got to be more firm with our Caribbean partners. My second question to you, Mr. President, concerns taxes. People don't want to wait until we get oil, their taxes go down. I know that the last forum, you promised us that there would be a review of that, not a revision of it. But today, I've thought long and hard a bit of something you said then. Maybe it can come down, maybe it can go up. But you know, it may not be a bad thing for it to go up to 20%. On the condition that you remove total personal income tax and you give people more spending power. And if you do the maths, you will see that the government doesn't come off worse. They come off better, because I can guarantee you, and I know the commission is here, that at least 1/3 of this country don't pay any personal income tax. But you will catch them with what? Lastly, Mr. President, the argument that electricity is the reason why you have no downstream in the timber industry, to my mind, is pure hogwash. I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem, again, is policy. If you produce a lot and sell it, let's use one species that everybody sees in Pomarolon, right? There's a price set by the Forestry Commission, an FOB price, $220 per cubic meter, on which you pay 20% tax, export tax. But if you come and put it to a square, the price set by the Forestry Commission is $1,050. And do you know what the tax is? The tax is 17%. I don't know who thinks of these things. You sit down and work it backwards, and you will see that it is not conducive to any manufacturer to do downstream in this country. And then you've got to look at it. And I've said this 100 times.
I think that's a battle we have. The first part of the question you talk about export to CARICOM. I think it's a battle that we have to continue to fight. You're talking about more or less the non-tax, the non-tariff barriers that are put in place by CARICOM. So it's a battle that we constantly have to fight. And I can promise you that we're doing that at every meeting that we have with CARICOM, that those issues are raised, and but it's a fight that we have to continue to keep doing. The other part of your question on VAT, you got to recognize that when VAT was introduced in our country, we eliminated many other taxes. One tax that comes to my mind immediately is the consumption tax that has been eliminated. And as far as the report that you're talking about is concerned, yes, I did. I had set up a committee that I had given this task to do. There was some little bit of disagreement on the terms of reference and so forth. I haven't had a report on this as yet. And I don't know if they're waiting for us to resolve some of our differences that we have on some of these terms of reference. The other part of the question, you probably live this every day. I'm not in that detail, but I'm going to ask my technical people to look at what you're saying, to see if what you're saying is indeed so, and if it makes sense. And then I don't think that those things should exist. But I don't have the details with me. I must tell you that.
I just wanted to clarify. We GME never advocated a ban on exports. We we suggested a sliding scale. When you come in, percentage of your production can be exported. And over a period of time, let's say 10 years, to stop it, you know? So we're not going to save money immediately. The second thing is regarding the revenue authority. I mean, I have to disagree with you, Mr. President, that these foreign investors, and particularly Asians, get more concessions than us. And I mean, I can send you the correspondence. And I mean, I got to bring up, I had to write the Minister of Finance last week because the last refusal I got, through going this, the letter, the last refusal that my company got through going this, it was copied not only to the Minister of Finance, but it was copied to Dr. Luncheon, Secretary of the Defense Board. And that for me was like a very ominous response to a simple request for tariff concession.
As far as I'm aware, and I'm going to double check that, now that you raised it, as far as I'm aware, as far as the policy of the government is concerned, that no foreign company should have any advantage over another investing in our society. That is our policy. That is what this is where we stand in this matter. And I have no information that any foreign